Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. It's FPL Fran, and today we'll be looking at my transfer plans for Gameweek 34. But not only that, just moving on to Gameweeks 35, 36, 37. We have the doubles in place now, so really worth discussing all the plans going forwards. For myself as a manager who just has the bench boost left, plans to play out on bench boost 37. But obviously, in the meantime, I have to navigate the sort of short term with 34, making sure that I'm not over invested potentially into it, and then going full steam ahead for Gameweeks 35 to 37, which of course is your Newcastles, your Chelseas of the world, even United technically. Interesting, of course, that I posed a question on Twitter about whether people would like to go for players like Brennan Johnson or Jackson, as opposed to, let's say, Isak and Gordon. A lot of people were super high on Isak, and then Jackson drops a great performance versus Everton. So it just shows you like our conception of players in FPL just changes so quickly. Isak, of course, is incredible. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking that I'd like to get two of them, but we'll talk about that later down the line in terms of my transfer plans outside of Gaming 34. As far as my team, just quickly reviewing Gaming 33 though, we did get we actually got 80 points in the end. Part of that, of course, was Palmer getting triple bonus points. My overall rank is now 1,463. So finally a green arrow, finally not getting rotten luck. But it does feel bad in the sense that this week, I was pretty confident playing my Arsenal players, knowing that my bench was a lot weaker. And last week, for example, I thought Arsenal had a tougher fixture in regards to Brighton. Obviously, it didn't play out like so. They completely demolished Brighton, whereas here, I think Aston Villa really deserved the win, and you could argue it was an Unai Emery masterclass, which is fair enough. But within the context, before hindsight, obviously, felt like it was a good week to sort of punt against Arsenal. This week, I decided to not do that, given that they were at home, and obviously, for Gusto, for example, not playing Sheffield United at home, for Pau Torres playing Arsenal away, and just seeing how it turns out is kind of funny. But that's life in FPL. That happens from time to time, but it doesn't mean that we should obviously go for tougher fixtures on purpose, right? Flecken, for example, delivering the goods versus one of the weakest teams in the league on offense, particularly when you look at expected goals in Flecken, that feels really good. A little bit differently with Guardiola, obviously, he got completely saved our bacon with 1 goal, 1 assist. You don't see that often with a defender. Anytime you see 12 points, you probably think that's an assist, triple bonus, maybe a clean sheet at best. But no, he got it the hard way, and that was 1 goal, 1 assist. Otherwise, though, the team is very quiet. Liverpool and Arsenal, obviously, a big part of our teams right now because we're sort of building towards Gaming 34. I feel like the managers who maybe wildcarded recently more into your Chelseas and your Newcastles of the world would have done much better this week given the results that they had. Newcastle defense, for example, still getting a clean sheet there. Isak, Gordon doing incredible. Even Jackson, for example, and Gusto doing well too. So fair enough to managers who had those sorts of players. I think all in all, a good week, and we tried to build on this for Game Week 34. What I can say, of course, when I'm looking at my immediate transfers is that I think the idea here for this week, given that I'm in a position of having 2 free transfers, is that I have a wide array of options to go to, and I'll kind of show them through different transfer plans. So I have almost like a transfer route 1 and a transfer route 2. But the first thing I wanted to mention before I jump into transfer routes 1 and 2 is that I'll definitely be making one transfer, in my opinion, for a defender. And that defender is probably going to be either Dan Burn or an Everton defender. The reason why I mentioned Dan Burn is because when you look at the amount of injuries that this Newcastle team have suffered, I feel like Dan Burn is the most in place to sort of secure his minutes at a cheap price. So, for example, without having to extend into Shar, who obviously he's doing brilliant. He's 4th now in terms of FPL total points, but I don't see myself really going towards Shar anytime soon. And Trippier still not being available sort of makes me want to, go towards a Dan Burn for now and think about basically having a strong team now and having the backbone of my bench for Game Week 37 in place. Because I've got someone like Gusto, I've got someone like Guardiola, who will definitely play within the double there. Not sure, of course, guaranteed to play both fixtures in the double in Game Week 37, but you have good options there. And Dan Burn, what's nice about him is that, for example, a fixture like Game 35, where Arsenal have a pretty tough game versus Tottenham, that's a good opportunity to play, for example, like Dan Burn, and to bench the Arsenal defense once again, even though it might be ill-advised. And so that's sort of what I'm thinking about right now, because this week I have the option, of course, I can go into an Everton defender, like a Mikolenko, for example, and that would be through Pau Torres, right? I've got 0.0 in the bank, so Mikolenko is definitely one option. But alternatively, of course, I've got Dan Burn on my radars. And when you look at, for example, Dan Burns' fixtures, it's not necessarily playing him versus Crystal Palace, but rather, for example, being able to play him versus Sheffield United, being able to play him versus Burnley, and then obviously for the double as well, which is a pretty good double. He's also a pretty good aerial threat. Whereas Mykolenko, it's an interesting one because obviously, yes, of course, we don't need to overreact to that Chelsea performance, but it was horrendous. Or even Tarkowski, for example. Branthwaite was also injured. I think that's my major concern with Everton's defense, because even though the fixtures are really nice, so for example, I would be able to enjoy the Nottingham Forest game. Hopefully, they don't get absolutely battered by Liverpool at home, which I think that there is definitely a home and away element to how good your defense is going to be. So much more confident about them not conceding 6, for example, versus Liverpool, and then I can play Mykolenko, which is very nice on a bench boost in Gaming 37. But the counterpoint, of course, is that it's either Dan Burn now or Mykolenko now, and it's still going to be 3 fixtures either way, and Sheffield United either way, if you want to think about it like that. Because obviously with Mykolenko, I could play him versus Brentford at home, but that's a different quality fixture there. So something to think about right now in terms of how I evaluate for a team like Everton, a team like Newcastle. Obviously, Everton are going to be fighting tooth and nail until the end of the season. And in my opinion, so will Newcastle too, just so that they can get the highest sort of league ranking that they will. Mykolenko, of course, they're pretty close to relegation spots right now, and it's no joke given the loss and obviously the huge loss of goal deficit as well for this fixture in Chelsea. So something to think about in terms of whether I prioritize, for example, this one Nottingham Forest fixture, or for example Dan Burn, which feels like a little bit more of a long-term transfer. But that's just something I wanted to talk about in terms of the guaranteed transfer that I make for Gameweek 34, because as it stands right now, the team that I will be fielding, without any transfers being made whatsoever, would be looking like this, right? We'd have Guardiola versus Brighton, and part of this is because I think that this Brighton team had definitely fallen off a little bit in terms of how strong they are as an offense. I'd be playing Muniz as well. Regrettably playing Pau Torres, on the bench, but look, everyone has doublers this week, so it doesn't actually look that strong at all. And then Palmer, Palmer's been incredible this season. Kind of happy I get to play Palmer, whereas I think a lot of other managers will be benching Palmer, and I think that still makes sense, right? You've got doubles. A lot of people have really good fixtures. This is Palmer's worst fixture of the season on paper, so it makes sense to bench Palmer. But in my situation, of course, if I'm planning for Game Weeks 35 and 37, I think I'm more within a spot where I can consider playing Palmer and trying to take it a little bit more relaxed this week, as opposed to taking a crazy hit. But we'll talk about that right now as we jump into my transfer plans for Game Week 34 and the different routes. So we're here with the Fantasy Football Hub, my team pick and rating planner. And the idea, of course, is just to illustrate my transfers from Game Week 34 to 37, because with Game Week 38 right now, we have no idea what the title picture will look like. We have no idea how the teams will compete in terms of, for example, let's say if you're a team like Arsenal and suddenly the title race is gone, Saka, who's been carrying an injury all season long, does he play, for example, the final game of the season, things like that. Those kind of things we have no idea about right now, so I don't think there's any point really taking a guess about them. So for the moment, for the purpose of obviously this video, we're just looking at Game Weeks 34 to 37. This is my transfer route number 1, and I think this is definitely the safer route, the less risky route, and you'll see why. So the transfer this week would be to go very, very counterintuitive to the Game Week 34 idea, but to go for Dan Burn. And the reason why Dan Burn is helpful, because as I mentioned, obviously with the previous sort of discussion between the Everton defender versus Dan Burn, is that it's going to ultimately help me out for the short term after this, and then also for that long-term bench boost. And the team is going to be weaker, right? 83% game week rating. This is very poor, but it's not a bad team in the sense that I have some pretty big threats and unique threats in terms of Luis Diaz, and obviously I have at least a good amount of doublers, right? I've got Neto, Saliba, Gabriel, Salah, Saka, Luis Diaz once again, and Solanke. So those are my doublers, and then I'll be playing 4 singlers, which is not ideal. A lot of people will have much more doublers. I expect most people have 9 to 10 doublers if they're dead ending. If people are free hitting, obviously you just go with your 11 doublers rather, and you probably enjoy life like that. So here, I guess I have a fortunate opportunity to play Palmer. I know this week is going to be my bad week, so I'm just expecting a red arrow. Muniz at home versus Liverpool is interesting because Fulham have been pretty good at home. And if anything we can give sort of discredit to Liverpool for, it's their defense. And so Haaland is not too bad in the sense that if you were, let's say, to compare a Haaland to a Cunha, a Haaland to a Mateta, I still think that on balance, he's pretty close to 2 fixtures. Maybe not Mateta, because I think Mateta has a really good double, but Cunha obviously, or Cunha rather, actually has a poor double. He's got Arsenal within one of those fixtures, and that's pretty much it, right? We would probably play Guardiola over Burn if we get confirmation that the Man City injuries are still in place, which means that Guardiola is going to be nailed to play. But for now, obviously, we just expect that Burn will probably play ahead of Guardiola, and it's kind of like it's a very passive, complete side grade of a move. Moving from, let's say, Pau Torres, who's got Bournemouth at home, to Burn. But because I've got 2 free transfers and I kind of still want to roll forward to make sure that my team is strong for Game Week 35 and particularly bench boost 37, this is the concept here. In Game Week 35, I think this is where our team is at its strongest. A lot of people will be wildcarding here in 35, and that's fine. I'm comfortable losing points to the wildcarders here. Once again, this is a good week to play. In fact, to bench my Arsenal defense, because if Guardiola is nailed to play, I can easily see myself playing Guardiola over Gabriel, which would mean that my defense would be Gusto, Burn, and Guardiola, and that's something that can very easily be done, by myself. Vicario is the transfer in from the goalkeeping perspective. Luis Diaz goes out for Anthony Gordon. And then the controversial transfer, once again, the transfer that I said I would do probably last week before Isak had absolutely terrorized Sheffield, or rather not Sheffield United, but actually Tottenham at home. And before Jackson had also terrorized Everton at home. A lot of people were recently feeling that Isak was very clear of Jackson. And then suddenly you have the Everton game, and I think maybe some people would have changed their minds because you have once again a double with Jackson. His minutes look very, very safe right now. But once again, after the Everton game, I'm still pretty high on Jackson. And I think I'm a little bit lower in terms of Brennan Johnson because, yes, I think we know that Brennan Johnson is a key part of the Spurs offense, but I just think that he is still prone to rotation probably at one point in the season. If Richarlison finds himself back in the team, he's probably going to somehow have, impacted reduced minutes, even though he technically doesn't, compete with Richarlison minute for minute. But I just think Gordon's a lot safer in terms of the guaranteed minutes. Whereas with Jackson, I think that the minutes are very much so guaranteed. And also the fixtures are probably still better than, let's say, Tottenham's fixtures. Because within Tottenham's fixtures, you've got an Arsenal fixture there, which just isn't nice. Here I can bench Gabriel, as I mentioned. Muniz is nice. Technically, you could even argue that this is a pretty potential bench boost, but it's like pitting your attackers versus your defense. A lot of people probably have more Spurs players, and that's fine. I'll be taking a -4 here. And the question, of course, once again, is going to be Jackson versus Isak, and also, of course, Gordon versus Brennan Johnson as well. So, here, I suppose the issue with me is that Isak right now is getting pretty expensive. He's at 8 million. And I can't afford going Isak right now and Brennan Johnson unless I want to, let's say, drop Vicario into someone like a Petrovic and then go Isak instead. So that would be an alternative, and I think that's pretty plausible. But the reason why I've gone for Vicario is because I just like the Chelsea triple up more in the sense that I don't want to double up in Chelsea's defense. And then here, of course, I still leave room for Isak later down the line if I really want to. I've got cash cows in Saka and Salah for Game Weeks 36, 37 to probably go out of them instead. So this would be the rough idea here, just prioritizing Jackson over Isak. And I think a lot of managers will even question, why not, for example, even go out of someone like a Saka on this week or a Salah on this week, even given that Salah looks pretty poor. And maybe, we can revisit that as well. But, my plan still is to make the 3 transfers that I've suggested here to take the -4. If I wanted to take a -8, I suppose, of course, there is a world where maybe instead of even going for Gordon, I would just go for Isak instead, because I still think that Isak, pick for pick, asset for asset, is better than Gordon. And maybe I can skip that Gordon transfer for this week. Still keep Luis Diaz within the team, potentially. Just go out of Salah instead. And maybe just go Salah to Gordon, sorry. But then actually also make an additional -8 where I go out of Muniz. And that would allow me to bench potentially Saka. It's not great, but it would basically look like Salah would stay in or Luis Diaz would stay in place, and then I would just have Isak and Saka on the bench, which doesn't feel very good. So that's why I don't really want to be too aggressive here with a -4. So yeah, here we are. In terms of captaincy, I think I would actually lean towards Palmer captaincy. It's just how things stand right now. I still think the offensive fixtures are better for Chelsea, so that's just where I'm sitting. As far as Game Week 36, though, this is a week where I plan to roll. This is a week where arguably I don't have the best goalkeeping combination compared to some other players. I do think I'll play Flecken. This is an opportunity here to maybe go for a double up of City, where I can easily play Guardiola over maybe Gusto here. I think I would definitely play Saliba over Gusto if I had to make that 50-50 decision on this game week here. but I would very comfortably play Guardiola, Gabriel Saliba, just like I did in Gaming 33, and I don't think that that's too bad whatsoever. Burn, of course, unfortunately is on the bench, so is Gusto, but Flecken, of course, still has a decent game in the sense that he's at home at the bare minimum. And then we roll towards Gaming 37 with 2 free transfers. And then the transfers that I've made on Gaming 37 are like so. It's once again another -4, very reminiscent of what we did in Gaming 35. So I've gone out of Saka into Foden. I've gone out of Muniz into João Pedro. And I've also gone out of Flecken into Onana and also bench boosting on this week. So the bench boost would be Onana, Salah, Gabriel Saliba. And I think one thing that we need to be keeping in mind, of course, is that the title landscape will change when we land towards Gaming 37. So my decision as to whether I keep Salah or whether I keep Saka will be 100% dependent on the title landscape. And of course, if there are any major significant injuries. Right now, I'm estimating that Man City will still be in the title race, that the Liverpool will still be in the title race, and even Arsenal, for example, will still be in the title race. And because of that, I really like, for example, Salah as a Gaming 38 captaincy. So I'm actually keeping Salah in this situation, knowing that I'll captain him as well as bench boost him on Gaming 37 here. So that is an idea. And of course, by going for a little bit more of a passive move on Gaming 34 with Burn, I will get the bench boost where I have a much more stronger defense than probably most managers in this bench boost here. But of course, compared to, let's say, the people who are wildcard on Gaming 35, we're clearly missing out on Bruno Fernandes. We're missing out on Isak as well, who a lot of people will be kind of questioning, what about Isak? And I think going back to the point with Isak there, the question goes back to players like Saka and Salah. So for example, if I'm not so high on Salah at this point in time in the season, then maybe I just move out of Salah as well, either on Gaming 35 or Gaming 37 and use him as my cash cow. That would allow me to go for Isak as opposed to João Pedro. So that's an option as well. But for now, I've sort of estimated that everyone's still within the title race, that Saka is going out for Foden, and then I make much more simpler transfers. And then on Gaming 38, obviously I can optimize my team, but we have nowhere near the understanding of exactly how fixtures will land. It's a really good fixture for Chelsea, so it's nice that we have Jackson compared to, let's say, Newcastle here, who actually have Brentford away. So that might be a small little, nugget in my head thinking about why I go for Jackson over Isak or why I don't go for Isak at all, just to take that differential. But just something to illustrate the transfers as I plan to navigate towards the end of the season with sort of transfer route number 1. So transfer route number 2 is going to be slightly more aggressive, and not only slightly more aggressive, it's going to be hits galore for the rest of the season. And a lot of people will be probably questioning, why bother doing this? But in my opinion, of course, it's just a question of whether you believe in the upside of, let's say, a player within a double game week and whether you think it's worth maximizing. So here, I think I'd be going with Tarkowski here instead of, let's say, going for Burn. The reason being, of course, is because we're trying to maximize Game Week 34 instead, and we'd be going out of Son as well. So Son to Eze would be the move, and that frees me up with enough cash to go Muniz to Isak, and also we just go Pau to Tarkowski as opposed to, Pau to your Burns of the world and things like that. So this would make my team a lot stronger for Game Week 34. A lot more robust, but of course the Eze transfer sort of makes me effectively 2 transfers behind, I'd say, and also the ability to get rid of Luis Diaz becomes a little bit trickier too when it comes to how we manage Game Weeks 35, 36, 37, so on and so forth. So on Game Week 35 here, instead of actually, let's say, going for Gordon, instead of making midfield changes, the only change that we're really going to make is to go out of Salah into Son. And once again, this probably will come about as, as a result of maybe something that I'm feeling towards, how I plan to play around Salah for the rest of the season. But here my estimate is that, to get into Son, who I think is, vice captain territory, of course, Palmer, of course, captain territory, I go out of Salah, he becomes the cash cow. I then have enough money to go into Jackson and Vicario, and that would be a -8 because, of course, we took a hit in the previous week. We only have 1 free transfer this week. We'll carry forward Tarkowski. We'll play a slightly weaker team, but I think I can easily play Guardiola over Gabriel. Maybe I bench Gabriel. Maybe I play Tarkowski. It just really depends on the situation there. And, of course, as I said, we take the -8, but that would mean that our team is once again very strong for Gaming 35. So this is one alternative to how I'd approach this, because I think a lot of people will be scared. Okay, you're taking -4s, -8s. That's really bad for your team. But I think you also have to think about these -8s are still strong, for example, in the sense that all the players that I'm bringing in are all going to double in Gaming 37 anyway. So I'm still building up the short-term and medium-term strength of my team. And the upgrades are quite huge in the sense that obviously, even though I lose Salah in a single game week fixture, I gain back a Son. I would have also benefited from Eze within the double in the previous week. And then game week 36, once again, I think this is a very simple week to just roll. I can obviously optimize my team here. Not much would change. Obviously, it just suggests that I play Gusto over Guardiola. I don't think that that's necessary, to be honest. Flecken also has a really good fixture here at home. So once again, no need to really move away from him. On game week 37, though, I would be once again pulling the trigger on another pretty big -4. And the reason why is because we roll in game week 36. We have the chance to triple up on City, and we go to Foden from Luis Diaz. And Luis Diaz has, for this moment in time, I would still think is hopefully a big part of that Liverpool attack. Now, if I don't think he's getting consistent minutes by game week 36, we can easily move out of Luis Diaz, or once again, here he's benched on game week 36 as an example. Which is something that we can manage. And so we go here to Foden, and we make the additional transfer towards Onana as well. And the team is quite strong in my opinion, because I think when you look at it here, once again, you're sort of relying on the strength of this Arsenal team. I will be Salah-less, which is something I need to think about whether I'm pro going Salah-less or not. And the final transfer here for the -4 is going to be Eze to Gordon. So by taking an additional hit here, we get Gordon with 2 great fixtures, 1 home fixture, 1 United fixture, which is perfect basically. And we still get towards double Newcastle, towards some way here in Gaming 37. So this is the alternative. And I think this feels stronger in the sense that, this sort of transfer path has a lot more money in the bank. It still is a very strong team. And of course, the only sort of glaring flaw, I suppose, compared to some of the other managers who'll be continuing with their really strong Salah Holland teams is that I don't have Salah. But I also recognize that actually I have a lot of team value in the bank. And the only big player here that I think that I'm missing is really Bruno Fernandes, who I can't necessarily afford through, for example, that Gordon transfer there. But it's something that I can absolutely do through Saka, for example. So if I wanted to take, let's say, an additional hit here on this week, and I really wanted to go to Fernandes, I could make that additional transfer here on this week. That -8 could, or rather, extend that, as I said, into a -8 as well. So that's a possible transfer that I can make. And as you can see, it seems like the transfer planner still really likes that in terms of the game week rating of the team. So it could be worthwhile making that additional hit for Saka. And once again, the question needs to be asked as to, what is the position of Arsenal at that stage in the season? Because of course, if let's say Arsenal are struggling within the title race, they're out of the title race, I have less confidence in Saka's minutes, and Bruno Fernandes is someone who just plays 90 minutes, no matter what the time is within the year. So we get Bruno Fernandes here, and that might be a good hit to take around that time. So that's going to be the rough plan for both my transfer routes. And I really am considering, for example, this much more aggressive transfer route here, because I still think that ultimately I have already sort of, I have to lie in my bed, right? I have to lie in the bed that, I've already wildcarded. I don't have a free hit. And I think it's okay to understand that I can navigate aggressively towards the short term, because here, for example, in a week where I've got Son with a blank and Eze with a really, really good double, and his minutes have looked good so far, with exception to Liverpool and City, where I think you can argue that it's more tactical, for example, in the Liverpool game when they want to defend the lead, or City, for example, where the game is a bit of a lost cause and therefore Eze is rested. But if you look at the previous matches with Eze, he was actually playing 90-minute games within succession. So I think that with 2 easier opponents here within West Ham and Newcastle, these are opportunities for Crystal Palace to get points again, and opportunities for Eze to play out, hopefully, 80, 90 minutes of football. So I do like this transfer path, and it really comes down to whether I have a lot of confidence over Eze's ability to kind of outscore the hits that I would be taking around gaming 35 and 34. So that's something to think about, whether it's worth it to take those hits for Eze. And the reason why I'm also moving towards Isak and taking a hit here is because I kind of like, upgrading Isak from Muniz on this week, because when you compare, for example, someone like Muniz, who probably had a predicted points of, let's say, 4.7 or 4.4 for this week, I still think that whenever you take a hit, as long as you think that you can recoup the hit within 1 to 2, 3 weeks, and you're actually upgrading in that week specifically, which I still am, just not by 4 points within this week, I still think that the hit is worthwhile for Isak, because it feels like you're already giving yourself a chance to recoup it, as soon as possible, as opposed to, the week where Isak has the double. So that's why I've decided to do that here, and that's why I'm thinking, along that lens, and that's sort of the rough idea here with this plan. Let me know what you guys think in terms of both the plans. Otherwise, I hope you you guys have a wonderful week ahead, and good luck with whether you're let's say dead ending into wildcard 35, managing a team like myself here without too many chips left, or of course going for the free hit in 34, which of course there will be a video for. But otherwise, as I said, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you soon.